Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today I'm doing another First Impression Fridays, and today I'm going to be talking about two fragrances, Healy Note de Yuzu and a Clive Christian fragrance, Crab Apple Blossom. So stay tuned for that. If you like first impressions, clone comparisons, fragrance reviews, and top 10 lists, hit that subscribe button for more great content. I've never really been a big fan of Clive Christian, to be honest with you, but I did try Pacific, or just Rock Rose, not Pacific Rock Rose, just Rock Rose recently, and I was actually really impressed by it. It was really, really good fragrance. I see why there is a lot of hype around it, so I decided to get another sample of theirs, which sounded interesting. I do like apple as a note, so Crab Apple Blossom. Hopefully, it's going to have a nice, luscious apple. I would say, at least for me personally, I've tried the Clive line, the CLIVE. Not a big fan of it, and I think that's what turned me off the brand, but at least I'm finding in other fragrances they have, there's a lot of really good ones. Healy, never really heard anything about them, but I do like Yuzu as a note, so this one sounds good, and moving, of course, into summer, this could be potentially a great fragrance, so I'm going to try it out, and actually I'm going to start with Healy. So Note de Yuzu, let's see what it's all about. So I think this one's got some good performance just off first impression. I'm not entirely sure, but even just opening this up, I definitely got a whiff of yuzu. Very nice, luxurious, well, quality is actually a better word. Quality, bitterness, and this is something I actually really like in citrus fragrances, and one of the things that draws me to yuzu and grapefruit, which are sort of similar notes in some ways, is that they can have a bit of a tartness or bitterness, and that works really well for some reason for me. I think it's because, for me personally, I used to eat grapefruit first thing in the morning, and grapefruit, especially if you don't put sugar on it, is a little bit tart, and it does I sort of give me that bright, nice, enjoyable morning breakfast kind of a feel. Very bright, but again, it is tart. Comes off slightly watery. I don't want to say aquatic, but it does have a refreshing feel to it. I get a hint of also greenness. Pretty light greenness. This is still dominated by yuzu, which is great because this is actually, why I picked up the fragrance. This is kind of what I was hoping for. Really, really nice off the opening. A lot of good potential there to be a really good summer fragrance. So I'm going to let it dry down a little bit while I move over to the Clive Christian. But so far, first impression, and that is actually the first Healy fragrance I've ever tried. First impression, very good on that one. So moving to Crab Apple Blossom. Again, this could be very floral. It could be really apple heavy. I really don't know. That is literally 100% not what I was expecting. It doesn't come off particularly apple-y. I'm going to dump a little bit more on because it's definitely a little bit more light than the yuzu fragrance. I want to get a good dose of it, but it is coming off a little bit like maybe a bit of a green apple vibe. But still also very subtle. So, I'm not sure what to make out of this one, really. It does have a bit of a freshness to it. As I said, it is very, very light. I wouldn't call this a really prominent apple, like if you've smelled, say, apple brandy or genre parfums, apples and aces. There is a very bright or very strong, prominent apple note. Also something like Greenlee, where there's a really crisp green apple note. Doesn't come across like that at all. I mean, there is a very slight kind of candied feel to this. that does, unfortunately, I mean, this fragrance does unfortunately remind me of why I'm not such a big Clive Christian fan. Rock Rose is really, really nice, really easy to wear. This is, I mean, it's not bad. It's just, personally, I of course know the price point for Clive Christian. That's one of the things. But fresh, light, it does have a bit of a refreshing vibe to it as well. And like I said, it's not at all bad. It's just nothing that really jumps out at me. I'm going to go back to the Yuzu and let this one now sit for a little bit. See if it develops. A lot of fragrances do need at least a few minutes to develop, which is one of the downsides to first impressions. I always think it's best if you're trying out a fragrance to have a sample that's, big enough for you to wear it 2 or 3 times to really decide what you think about it. So as it's moving sort of, I guess, in towards the mid, it's not quite as bitter. Although there is still a light tartness there. That yuzu does come off very similar to a little bit like a grapefruit. There's a little bit of a kind of like a fuzzy vibe to this one. It's hard to describe, but if you think of like the texture maybe of a peach, where it's kind of got the peach skin, it kind of feels like that, although it doesn't smell sweet and peachy, of course. It does smell a little bit more tart, citrus. In fact, I even pick up, it smells a little bit like lemon as well. Still fresh, uplifting. I don't really get any prominent greenness, so that sort of a bit of that green vibe that I felt in the right in the opening, right in the first impression. Don't really pick that up. But it does again have a little bit, almost a little bit of like this candied citrus vibe, which I find a lot of citrus fragrances for me do kind of move into that territory. But ultimately, it does smell good. It is nice. Of course, again, as I complain almost every time with these kinds of fragrances, I like it to be more bitter and longer lasting bitterness, where this sort of tart bitter vibe does certainly seem already to be falling off a little bit, which is, I guess, perhaps fine. But yeah, again, I do like when it has that nice bitterness. I'm going to go back to Crab Apple Blossom, see what has developed. I will say the oil content, very strong on this one. It's still shiny, oily on my skin. That's interesting. I get almost a slight creaminess there. And whatever was reminding me a little bit of apple definitely is shifting away. I'm not really getting, again, a lot of apple. I think that was my biggest expectation, was that there would be some kind of crisp apple or a nice juicy apple. A light floral vibe. It doesn't smell quite like a white floral or anything, but it does definitely have a little bit of a floral feel to it. Not quite as bright, as uplifting, as refreshing as perhaps it was right in the opening. And I get a little bit of what feels like a woody base, but nothing particularly prominent. Again, so, I'm actually going to stop there because I don't think it's going to change much in the next few minutes. But, I do think these are fragrances for similar occasions. Spring, summer, warm weather, definitely. I think personally for me, the Healy, the Note de Yuzu, is a lot nicer. I do like that really bright citrus bitter opening that it does have, and it still is going in a good direction. It still has a little bit of that tartness. It still has that refreshing kind of quality, and definitely very citrus heavy feeling going for it still. Whereas Crabapple Blossom, I'm not quite sure what it's going for. Maybe I should have looked at the notes beforehand, but I think, what I was expecting and what this ends up doing, it just doesn't, especially with the name, doesn't really make much sense to me. Again, it doesn't smell bad in any particular way. It's a little underwhelming for me personally. Not getting a prominent apple, perhaps that's part of it. I was really hoping for that. But again, both good for spring, summer, both nice casual wear, although I would say that Crabapple Blossom for some reason does feel like it could be a little bit more formal in its attire. But, you know, I think they're both fairly versatile. But for me, again, clear winner. Note de Yuzu. Nice one. If you like Yuzu, definitely get a sample. Try this one out. We'll probably do a full review or more wearings of Note de Yuzu to see if it is going to be a really good one for the summer, especially as that is just around the corner. Anyways, if you tried anything from Healy or Clive Christian, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think or what are some good recommendations that you have. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.